The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
What's cracking, everybody? Welcome to Thursday's Fantasy NBA Today. Dan Besbris, Neil Rochlani with you here at Hoop Ball HQ. That's a lie. I'm in Los Angeles and Neil's in Chicago. Hoop Ball HQ is everywhere. As we talked about on previous shows, Hoop Ball HQ could be as far away as what did we get? We had one guy that tweeted at us that he was the lone listener in Mongolia, so that was pretty sweet. What's going on, man? Neil, what's up?
Wow, lone listener in Mongolia. That's awesome. I'm doing well. Good to be back on with you. I've been enjoying your betting podcasts and hearing your wisdom as I try to figure out how to bet these things going into next year. And other than that, just listening to some mock drafts or doing some mock drafts and trying to come up with some rankings. How are you?
I see. So you've already gotten a little bit of Benjaminitis, huh?
Well, how can you not catch Benjaminitis?
I try to think of the right way.
He is so infectious. I love his enthusiasm. So anyway, yeah, so he and I have not mocked together yet, but I have started doing some mocks and starting to see some I know we're going to get into some rankings later, but it's some of it's so bizarre. I don't know how some of these guys who comes up with the rankings. It's so strange.
Yeah, so I think that'll be one of the main topics on today's podcast. By the way, you can follow us at Dan Besbris, at Ball with Neil. And I mentioned that right here out of the chute before we even get into the stuff, because Neil's the guy handling placement for all Hoop Ball leagues this year. If you still want to join any of the free Roto or head-to-head leagues or any of the $50 Roto or head-to-head leagues, let Neil know. You can tweet at us on Twitter. That's where you tweet. Twitter's for tweeting. And Neil will get you placed in one of those leagues. There's a steady trickle these days, right? Right out of the chute, there were like 50 or 60 people that came at you, and you had to try to figure out how to do it. Now, you've been able to settle in. I've seen you tweeting with people. I've seen you corresponding. It seems like you've got a pretty good plan in place. And we're up to like nine-ish, I think, leagues that are filling up on both sides. I'm surprised that Cash Roto hasn't filled faster. That's my favorite type. To me, it's the one that really emphasizes activity and skill. And these are people that are so active and skillful. Why wouldn't they want to do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Maybe just they're afraid you're going to be in there and they're going to intimidate by you. And they can't win.
That's kind. I'm not. I'm not in there.
I don't know. And we do have more free leagues filling up than cash leagues. I don't know if that's an issue, or and definitely more head-to-head than Roto. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing. I prefer Roto as well.
Yeah,
I feel like there's too much variability and then luck down the stretch.
Yeah, exactly. That drives me crazy. Nothing makes me more angry than losing a head-to-head league because my guy just happened to turn an ankle on 1 week at the wrong time of year. I mean, if a guy turns an ankle, it always kind of stinks. But in a Roto league, when he does it, really isn't that big of a deal. You're just going to lose a couple of games into your total bucket. You figure out how to replace those games played. And in a head-to-head, if it's your second-round pick that goes down, you're just done. I don't want my money disappearing like that. That's nuts. Anyway, but to each his own, or her own. And if you guys want to join any of these leagues, as I mentioned, you can also do so in the Hoop Ball forums. Go to hoop-ball.com, click on the forums tab. There is a Hoop Ball league thread, post in there, and Neil's checking that bad boy daily as well. So the other thing on the docket here at Hoop Ball, and Neil, I think you've probably heard the rumblings, the rumors, the Hoop Ball draft guide. That's coming out in the next 2 to 3 days. I've been told that it is basically by the weekend, I think, at the absolute latest, which I think puts us in the, 24 to 72 hour window. I don't have the exact time, but please stay tuned. Follow at Hoopball Fantasy or at Hoopball Tweets or any of us, basically any people that working over at Hoopball. We will help get the word out. It is awesome. It is extensive. It is hundreds of thousands of words long, which is freaking nuts. And it will also, as you get closer to opening day, we'll have the Brewski 150. It'll have some live chats involved in it. It's gonna be amazing, and there's gonna be a special deal right when it first comes out. So if you're one of the, when the music drops kind of thing, if you get the album right when it drops, you can get it at a discounted price. We'll of course keep you updated on that. Okay, I think that was all the non-basketball stuff to cover on today's show. Neil, I wanted this is, you and I are sort of the two degenerates here. So when we get together, there's usually a little bit of discussion of gambling. We're going to do a lot of fantasy stuff on today's show, so sit tight for that, folks. Don't worry, it's coming. But Neil and I were talking a little bit off air about some of the places where, at least so far, because I haven't covered every team yet, you and I have not seen eye to eye. And I was hoping you could actually either convince me I'm wrong on some of these things, or we could just go over some of the methodology, because I think it's interesting to hear how different people handicap stuff. So, like one you mentioned before we hit record was the Detroit Pistons. And I have to admit, that's not one of the teams that I'm totally married to. As people heard when I talked about it, I had a pretty good lean to the under, but, not like some of the teams where I'm thinking I feel really confident in this thing. I just felt like the health with that team is an issue. The Blake Griffin, Reggie Jackson stuff, the new coaching staff, but you like the over, so tell me why.
Yeah, so this is more, this really isn't like a basketball thing, more than just like a human nature thing for me and liking the over. Well, one would be the East is a little bit weaker. They did win 39 games last year. They did build a new arena, I believe, open last year, and they're really trying to have the franchise be a winner. What I think is a winner is a playoff team. So I think they're going to gun for the playoffs this year. And I think Griffin, when he came to Detroit last year, was probably totally shocked by that, and maybe wasn't able to adjust fully mentally to that. But now that this is his life situation, and I think he's going to come out and really work hard in the offseason and be a better contributor than he was to Detroit last year. And then again, they brought in a very good coach, or at least someone who has proven to be a very good regular season coach. I know you talked about he may not be the best modern day coach, but he seems to have done pretty well. So between that and the organization really wanted to make a push for the playoffs this year, and having some pretty good talent. I know there's injury risks with Griffin and Jackson, and they do have some no names out there, but I don't know how they all fit together. And I just think this coaching staff, or the new coaching staff, can figure out a way to make it work. So I think they're going to be fighting for that 8th seed, which means I would put them right in the high 30s, low 40s. So somewhere between 39 and 41, and their over-under is 37.5. So that's my thought. It's really more about an organization that wants to win, a team, coaching staff that wants to win, some really good players that I think have pride and want to show they're still good. So more than like looking at the X's and O's and the players. If that makes sense.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense, actually. I mean, I don't know that I'm going to change my lean on this thing, but I think it's a really good example here that we've each kind of presented a case on a team. And it's why none of these things are sure bets. I mean, that's why it's betting. Even if you feel like you have some value on a thing, there's a very real case to be made. And you just made an excellent one for Detroit going over. If they're healthy, then my idea probably goes right down the toilet, right? I mean, most of my logic with this one resides in 2 points. One of them being the new coaching staff, I think, is going to run into some issues with sort of getting everybody to buy in immediately. I think there will be a learning curve that costs them early in the year. And the other is that Blake Griffin is pretty set on like 55 games a season these days, and Reggie Jackson not that far off. Reggie Jackson sort of powered that ship for Detroit. They got off to an okay start last year before he went down, so maybe he makes it through the year. Maybe Reggie Jackson plays 75 games. I think they could very easily win 38 of those 75 if he's in the lineup. You made a good point. The East is weaker, so there's a few more potential wins you could kind of pick off in that regard. My worry with this team is if they don't get off to a quick start, then they really can't weather the injury bug, and that sort of snowballs a little bit. But like you said, if they've got these pieces, the narrative for the Pistons is they do want to make a push. They're tired of being on the outside looking in. Do they have the pieces? That is kind of the question to be answered. So I mean, for me, I was never hugely confident in this one. I'm like I said, I'm not going to change on air with this, but I think you make a lot of really good points. And if you're more confident in it than I am, then freaking awesome, honestly, right? Because none of us are actually going to bet on all 30 of these teams. It's really more of an exercise to break down all 30.
Yeah, so when I went through these teams, I highlighted about 20 total that I was breaking down, and about half were over and half were under. So based on my methodology that, is new for me, I have to admit, doing overs and unders. So Detroit was one of my stronger ones for over. So I am confident in the way I approached it. I'm not sure it's the right approach, but we'll see.
So confident, but sort of confident.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is one of those things where I have an approach. I'm going to try and go with it and then see how it pans out.
Oh, neat. All right, well, what do you got from, because I haven't covered the teams at the end of the alphabet yet, as you've probably noticed from some of my shows. What are you thinking from some of those end of the alphabet teams? Anything jump out that you want to throw into this one?
I'm sorted by difference.
Oh, no.
Wait, hold on, though. I can do the alphabet in my head, Dan.
That's why we love you, Neil. You got all 26 of them in there.
I'm actually going Phoenix under.
I don't remember what I did with them. Yeah,
okay, so they 28.5 is their over under. 21 wins last year. I just see too many new pieces coming together this year. An organization that doesn't know how to win yet. A new coach who's coming over from Europe, who I'm sure is a great coach, but he's got to fit into the modern day or fit into the NBA system. And I don't think he knows these players like many assistant coaches already do, being part of the NBA for several years. So. With Ayton, with now Brandon Knight back in the starting lineup, Devin Booker, who really isn't a great facilitator, Ariza, who will play that professional role, but is just a guy who is very good as a complement, but not as a main guy. I just don't think they're going to win that many games this year.
It's a big jump. Looking at that one, I actually even saw it open at 29.5, so maybe it even came down a little bit. I'm with you. I think that's too big of a leap for a team that. I compare the Phoenix Suns to like the Memphis Grizzlies because they both had wretched seasons last year. But when you look at Memphis, you're like, oh, well, like they have some guys on this team that have actually shown they can win before. And as I said on a recent podcast, they effectively had the same team each of the last 2 years. And one time they won 40 games, and the other time they won 20 games, give or take. Where with Phoenix, like on Memphis, Mike Conley comes back. He knows how to win. Marc Gasol knows how to win. All these little things. They brought in Slow-Mo. They brought in Garrett Temple. With Phoenix, like you just said, there's a culture thing that needs to flip before they can get over that hump. And to me, 30 is kind of that hump. We saw the Lakers get there last year. They started to figure out how to win a little bit. I like that they brought in Trevor Ariza. I don't mind that they overpaid for him. I think that's helpful for the young guys. But it's just like piles and piles of shot chuckers on that club. And somehow they have to completely rebuild the offense to get everybody involved. I mean, it was... And Neil, I don't know how many Phoenix Suns games you watched. I watched many. Too many, in fact, because it was nauseating. And you could just see the dynamic on the floor. As soon as one guy got the ball, it was going up. So the next time down the floor, another guy got the ball, and he said, well, crap, I'm not passing it to... dude A, because he's going to shoot it. So I better shoot it. Dude B's going to get his. And it went on like this. And their offense was very one-man gang kind of deal. I like Devin Booker's shot, but like you said, he hasn't shown he can be a great facilitator yet, at least not without a pile of turnovers. I like the DeAndre Ayton pick, but I think there's this weird expectation he's going to be a game-changing superstar right out of the gate. Probably not going to be that fast. Maybe he'll get there, but probably not on day one. So, yeah, the mentality thing. I think I'm with you on that one. I think this was over-adjusted up for having the first overall pick. I know that they ran into injury stuff last year, but there's no guarantee they won't deal with that again. I think we're one season away from Phoenix actually trying to make a little bit of a push. They're not quite at that point yet. So I agree with you on that one. That's one of those ones where you look at the number and you're like, am I overthinking this? Why is this so high? No, I don't think that we are. So let's talk some fantasy stuff, because I haven't done that in a little bit. My solo shows have been all gambling stuff, and my Adrian shows have been all dynasty. I haven't been able to do anything on this podcast from a fantasy perspective in days. So Neil and I came up with kind of a fun exercise. Neil's been logged in to ESPN for a couple of weeks, scouring their mock drafts and their rankings. I'm more of a Yahoo guy. By the way, all hoopball leagues are at Fantrack, so we got everything covered right now. And we went through and each of us found a handful of our most surprising pre-ranks from the big box sites. We don't even really know where they get these rankings. I think Yahoo gets most of theirs from RotoWorld. I think ESPN has their own guys that provides them. So you want to just alternate, Neil? Because I feel like ESPN, theirs are generally more... Are they more category-based or more points-based over there?
Yeah, I'm not even sure. I think it's more I don't know how they come up with the ranks. I thought it was category based, but they're so off from what they were last year in terms of some of the finishes. I'm not even sure. So
All right,
I can't say for sure.
Give me your number one surprise then. Let's start there. We're going to talk about how
this one's going to be so easy to bash, so I'm almost afraid to say it.
Say it. Do it. Bash away.
I'm going to tell you the rank 28, and the name is Dwight Howard.
Oh, my God. So that's got to be point-based, right? There's no other explanation.
Yeah, maybe that's what they're going there.
Okay, because that's the most insane thing I've ever heard if there's any category involved. Although I will say Yahoo 9cat has Dwight Howard at 73. So, I mean, that's not 28, but that's still way higher than he ever gets when he's taken, 4 or 5 free throws a game and just clanging the crap out of all of them. I thought he had one of the best seasons that we could have ever expected from him last year in Charlotte, and he was still a god-awful fantasy player, right? I mean, he was I think he was 16 and 12 last year. That was pretty good in the popcorn stats. 1.6 blocks, but 57%, by the way, one of his best free throw shooting seasons in years, on 7.2 attempts per game. The only way you move Dwight Howard inside the top 90 is if suddenly his free throw number drops to 4 per game. That's crazy. 28, it has to be point-based.
Yeah, so now this might throw off some of these ranking discrepancies, like you said. That he finished 104 and 8 cat last year on averages. So this is gonna be harder than for me to kind of go with evaluating, but I'll stick with it.
All right, let me do my first one then, since I know Yahoo is doing category based, and I'll stay pretty early. And this was. It's not necessarily, by the way, when I say I have found some surprises here, they're not necessarily good or bad surprises. It was just, it shocked me to see the guy where he ended up being. And here's my grouping. I'm going to do a chunk here in the first 10, because if I had to pick just a couple here, I'd lose my mind. I was really surprised to see Steph Curry at 3 inside the top 10. I was really surprised to see Nikola Jokic at 7. And I was really surprised to see Kawhi Leonard at 8 in Yahoo's pre-ranks. I thought, and it's not because I disagree with those rankings, it's because I really thought they would start lower, that people would be turned off by Steph's injuries last year, by the Kawhi Leonard saga, by Jokic missing time, and the fact that he doesn't do much really on the defensive side of the basketball. Did you expect those guys to be pre-ranked that high coming off of the seasons that they had?
Oh, absolutely not. You said Curry at 3?
Curry at 3.
Yeah, that might be where I take him, but no, I didn't think he'd be ranked that high. Just for comparison, he's 10th in ESPN in this ranking. So, which is obviously way too low. And then Kawhi with the risk. Yeah, I would be surprised Kawhi's that high as well. You said he was 11th?
8th.
8th. Oh my!
Yeah.
So he's 11th in mine. So
this really. I mean, it's
yeah.
Okay, so we don't have true ADPs on these guys yet, so we don't know where they're really going to be going in drafts. But I mean, ADP or the pre-ranks, I should say, really steer the ADPs of guys a lot, because a lot of people go into these drafts without their own rankings, and they're just like, whatever, Yahoo's got Kawhi at 8, so I better take him pretty close to 8. I mean, to me, that's a really accurate placement for him. I feel like he could be a end of first round kind of guy this season, but I didn't expect fantasy sites to have him ranked there coming out of the chute. I thought he'd be one of those value guys.
Yeah, I thought he'd be ranked mid-second round, and I was looking at him at the end of the first round. So, surprise there. And then what was your third one you said?
Jokic at 7, which is not crazy, but I mean, that's a high ceiling for a guy who doesn't do a ton on the defensive side of the basketball. I like Jokic, by the way.
Yeah, and I did was doing some research, and I did hear that he last year, after post All-Star break, with no setback, he finished 3rd overall in ACAT.
Interesting.
In that period. So when I heard that, I thought 7th. He's 7th in this ranking as well on ESPN, and I thought that was high as well. But I guess people have bought the hype, Dan.
Yeah, don't buy the hype, which is not fair to say, because I think Jokic is going to be a really safe, middle to end of first round kind of guy. So if you take him at 7 and he ends up as like the number 9 guy, you're not going to be all that disappointed. That's fine. That's a really safe pick. It just surprised me to see guys. It surprised me to see him at 7. I thought that you'd see him more like 9 or 10, and then with the hope that maybe he could clear that by 1 or 2 spaces. Those were the 3, and I say first round guys. I'm just going to do groupings of 10 right now because it's easier to keep track of. Those are the 3 dudes in the top 10 that I either didn't expect to see there or didn't expect to see nearly that high. I've been hoping, Neil, I've been like sitting over here biding my time, hoping that Steph Curry starts falling to 5 or 6 or 7 maybe even. But this is going to throw that plan completely out of whack. Okay, what have you found over there looking at, again, at kind of the points format? I don't know. What other names jump out at you?
Yeah, so, well, this now makes more sense, but Giannis is second in this ranking, which maybe at points format that makes more sense, but obviously for 8-cat or 9-cat doesn't. The other one with a big discrepancy I saw was Bledsoe, ranked 82nd.
82nd?
Yes, and I'm not sure how to translate in points leagues, but he finished 23rd last year.
Yeah, there's no reason why that should be. I mean, we can sit back in our rocking chairs here and bash the crap out of that one, because points or regular, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because turnovers are a little bit of a ding on him, which points leagues, that should actually help him a tiny bit. He's a good foul shooter, so maybe that doesn't help him the way that it would in a category-based situation, but otherwise, like, there's no outliers with him, right? Like with Dwight Howard, you've got the free throw outlier, where if you're basically punting that category, then yeah, he rockets up the fantasy charts. But I mean, Eric Bledsoe, Yahoo, by the way, in 9-cat has him pre-ranked at 44, which to me is much closer to where you'd expect him to go.
Yeah, I was going to even say even higher than that, maybe late 30s. So I was shocked to see in the 80s.
Does it show? Does it have any?
By the way, I get him in every mock draft in the 7th round, so it's great.
I'll say that's a pretty good 7th round pick. Does it have any of their methodology on there, Neil, as to why he would go so low?
Because it says, so this is, I'm actually in a draft waiting room, and it says 16 team roto. So, but if you go to ESPN, it's just, they don't have, they had the way too early rankings. So I don't know if this is what that is. And I'm still confused. But if you go to the draft room, they didn't have it laid out by draft pick number. So I don't know if this is like their way too early rankings that they haven't updated and they just threw this in. They don't have any stats yet for any of these players. So,
man, maybe I should join more ESPN leagues.
Yeah,
that's wretched.
We'll see when these actually start to get beat into shape once people start getting the mock drafts. And that's usually post football season starting. So we'll see. But I don't think they don't have projections yet.
What did you say that was again? 78?
What's that?
What did you say his number was again? 78?
82nd.
82. Oh my God.
Yes.
Even 4 slots worse. That is just mind-boggling. I've got to believe that that's going to get changed at some point. But how could it even open there? I mean, that's the expectation. The only way I could see him getting ranked in the 80s is if somebody assumes he's going to play like 60 games. Right? Like 3/4 of a season. That would put him in the 80s, potentially. Anything more than that, and he's a top 50 guy. I mean, his fantasy stat set has been great for years. That is some wild, nonsensical stuff going on over in that one.
You don't want to know who's ranked ahead of him. Anyway.
Wait a minute. Now I do. I got to know. 81? Who's 81?
81 is Eric Gordon. 80 is Alfred Payton.
Oh my God. Sign me up. I want the biggest money ESPN league you can find, and I want it now.
No, but here's the biggest one. 69, Marvin Bagley III.
Oh my God. What's happening over there? The worldwide leader in sports, ladies and gentlemen. They've lost their freaking...
Yeah, not in sports fantasy rankings, I guess.
Okay, so here's...
Not sure what's happening.
I'm gonna toss a couple of Yahoo second 10. We'll call it second 10 instead of second round. Second 10 guys that jumped out to me as interesting. Otto Porter Jr. was at 13 this year, his pre-rank. That's a big change from seasons past. That's a massive change. Kemba Walker is at 17, which is a lot higher than he finished last year. And those are probably the two. The other ones in there are actually pretty reasonable. You've got like Oladipo towards the front end, Lillard, Westbrook towards the front end, Chris Paul, Jimmy Butler, Kyrie Irving, Gobert, Drummond. That's basically the rest of that second 10. The Kemba Walker one surprised me a little bit. I think the assumption there is that, which is what I've been sort of peddling on this podcast, and that everybody in Charlotte's now going to get better because Dwight Howard is gone. The Otto Porter one, Neil, can we flesh this one out a little bit? Otto Porter Jr. was one of my favorite draft day steals last year because after one great season, 2016-2017, nobody believed that he was going to be that good again, and he was. I mean, I got him around 40 in some leagues, and then he ended up as a top 15 guy, top 20 easily, depending on sort of how you run. And obviously, this is a 9-cat thing. Now suddenly they finally buy the Otto Porter Jr. hype. Maybe it's 2 seasons too late. When Dwight Howard shows up in Washington, I think that he's now way overblown his ranking slot, and this is now Otto Porter going from underdrafted to overdrafted.
Yeah, this seems ridiculous. 13, you said? Mm-hmm. I mean, he finished 39 8-cat last year by averages.
So this is 9-cat, by the way.
Yeah, okay, so his turnovers are low. So he's probably, in the 20s?
He was inside the top 20 last year. So
he was.
To go based on last year, it's not totally crazy. He was number 20, I think, on a per game basis. And then I'll pull up totals here mid-sentence. On a totals basis, he's also number 20. Okay, so he's right on 20 in both per game and total. And they've got him 13, so 7 slots higher than last year with Dwight Howard showing up in Washington. I completely disagree.
I completely disagree, too. I mean, the 6.4 blocks I'm seeing has to come down, or I'm expecting to come down. And then the 50% shooting, is that typical for him, too? I don't know his history.
Yeah, that stuff is good.
That is what he's shooting every year? Wow.
Yeah, he's been awesome. He's an unbelievable draft day steal for me this year in the league that I won pretty easily. He was actually a 51.5 the previous season, so it came down season over season.
That's amazing. The 11.5 field goal attempts, I'm guessing will come down because of Howard as well. Maybe takes more 3-pointers as he's stretching the floor.
Ugh.
I mean, he made 1.8 last year. I don't know.
I hope
I don't
not.
see it either. I would have him. Well, an 8-cat, I would have him around 40 again. But I don't see, maybe a little bit lower because of the Dwight Howard effect. But where do you have him ranked, or where would you take him?
So certainly not at 13. I'll tell you that. And so I drafted him, as I said last year, near 40, knowing that he was going to probably sit somewhere near the top 20, and that's right where he finished up. If you take his numbers and you apply sort of the Dwight Howard effect to them, you likely dial him back to what he did 2015, 2016 iteration Otto Porter. So you got to go back a couple of years now. And in that season, he was at 11.5 points, 5 and change rebounds. He still had good steals numbers, decent shooting from the field. That type of stuff was still okay, but there was just a very clear drop across the board, and he was number 59 that season. So maybe take 59, apply a slightly better free throw percentage to it. He has gotten better in that department, but I don't know that probably a top 50 guy would be my guess this year. I hate what Dwight Howard does to forwards everywhere he goes. Didn't we? We saw it this year. We saw what he did to Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, to Marvin Williams. These were guys that actually had decent fantasy value in Charlotte the previous year. They were 9-cat studs, especially Marvin Williams, and Dwight Howard just turned him totally into a pumpkin. I don't know that it's going to be that extreme with Otto Porter. He's more involved in the game than Marvin Williams is on a night-to-night basis, but you push him away from the rim, you push him away from the bucket, you ruin his shot selection, you ruin what he can do on the defensive end. There's so many things to dislike about it, and now suddenly he's ranked even higher than he has been before.
Yeah, I don't see Otto Porter making it that high again. That's really ambitious. 13th. I'm not sure if he will get drafted there. It'll be interesting to see where he goes once we start doing mock drafts for real. So my next guy, I've got a couple. I'm not sure where to go with this. I am going to go, though, with Robert Covington, ranked 112th.
112th? Get out of here with that nonsense.
Yeah, that's what he would say to my shot if I try to shoot it. But anyway.
Do you know where he is? Yahoo 9-cat pre-ranks?
I don't know. 78?
42.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's a big discrepancy there. How can they possibly put him that low?
My only guess is people are thinking Fultz is going to start and he's going to, I don't know, like that he's not going to get as much playing time this year.
He's so critical to what they do. His defense.
I know. He's an essential. He's like the Reza of that team.
He is. I mean, he is very much. Very good. Good comparison.
He holds it all together. He's going to be playing a lot of minutes, and such great defensive stats. Great. I mean, his shooting isn't great, but he does score a lot of points and get 3-pointers. He finished last year 42nd in 8-cat per averages. So where he's ranked, I guess. And I don't know. I mean, he's 41%, so I don't think he's going to go down there. He only scored 12 points, so I can't see that changing too much. 2.5 3-pointers and 1.7 steals and 0.9 blocks. So maybe they're thinking the defensive stats come down some. I don't know. He's a monster on defense. He's like Marcus Smart. So I don't see those changing too much.
No, I agree with you. I mean, that's a massive steal over on the ESPN side. It's probably more accurate here over on the Yahoo 9 Cats. Let me give you a couple of names here from the next 20. I'll go 2 chunks here since we're outside the top 20 now. Kevin Love at 25 in 9-cat pre-ranks was interesting to me. We'll talk about that in a moment. DeMar DeRozan at 34 was very interesting to me as a 9-cat rating. And then a couple of, we'll say, slightly younger guys. John Collins at 36, Jamal Murray at 37, Jared Allen at 38, and Miles Turner at 39. I thought that was a really interesting run of guys there at the end of the 30s. Here's my quick thoughts on those, Neil, and then I'll repeat the names because I know I threw a bunch at you. Kevin Love at 25, I feel like that's a steal. If you can get him around that point, he's a guy that has a potential to be an end of first round pick, depending on how the season goes for Cleveland. DeMar DeRozan, I mean, is he ever going to really get inside the top 40? No, come on, get out of here with that nonsense. And then John Collins, Jamal Murray, Jared Allen, Miles Turner. I mean, Miles Turner is the one where there's a little bit of a track record here. Jamal Murray did end up having a really nice season last year. Paul Millsap missing a ton of time certainly helped the cause. Gary Harris missing some time. Denver, I guess there's a chance they could deal with some injuries again. But wow, I mean, this is, you talk about projections. I guess we'll see what the ADP says on these guys. But those are very high projections for dudes, particularly Collins and Allen, that we haven't seen a ton from yet. I'm a little bit worried. And I feel like I need to preface everything I say in this podcast with, by the way, guys, when I talk about this, it doesn't mean I don't like the guy. It just means I don't like where they may end up getting drafted. I don't think I would draft John Collins. I don't think I would draft any of these 4 guys inside the top 40 because it sort of blows up any potential positive room for them. Like, where could they go from there? If you draft John Collins at 36, is there a world where he could really end the season higher than that? Jared Allen, maybe even a better example. That to me is a perfect world finish for those guys. So I would prefer to get them later, if at all possible. And now I'm worried that maybe it won't be possible.
So first of all, this is why my mocks are going so well. Jared Allen is plus 108 more spots down the rankings.
Wow.
ESPN. 144 in ESPN.
Oh, my God.
John Collins is number 100.
See, that's just if you can get those guys there.
I am getting them in my last.
You must be happier than a pig in you-know-what.
Yeah, God bless. I mean, Jared Allen I can't believe that. I mean, I don't understand. I would not take him before we get into no man's land, I think, like after 7th round. Same with Collins. Maybe I would reach for Collins in the 7th round. I don't know. Even that seems a little high. So
I appreciate you using the term no man's land.
I don't. When guys haven't done it before, I know you want to be ahead of the curve when you're drafting. You don't want to, you need to find guys that are going to jump up and other people aren't going to find. But so Collins, I'm much more willing to take maybe a little bit risk on, maybe 7th round. But Allen, I wouldn't take until after the 10th round.
I appreciated you, by the way, using the term no man's land. Fantasy NBA Today classic right there. What about Miles Turner at 39? This feels like not a terrible spot to take him. He was the one of those names where I thought, yeah, okay, I guess I could get behind that.
Yeah, finished 67th last year, but had an awful season, as you talked about. I think he is going to be back in the 40 range. So, I would take him in the 4th round if he's there.
So
mid to late 4th round.
Some of the weird stuff on these guys that jumps out at me, they've got like the preseason column and then the current column. And those two don't always see eye to eye. I believe the preseason column is an assessment of the previous year, by the way, for those of you that are sorting these things out. Like you can see Steph Curry is a little bit farther down the list. Well, Kawhi Leonard listed at 13, so maybe that doesn't make sense on the previous year. Otto Porter was listed at 32. We're going on the current, basically what is the projections that Yahoo has. These are not the ADPs. That's going to be where things get real interesting. We're going to spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about ADPs on guys from all different types of drafts. Certainly the Yahoo 8 and 9 cat ADPs, the ESPN ones. We're going to look at mock drafts from different industry sources. This is my favorite thing, Neil, and you've probably heard me soapbox about it before, is taking like the 5... Is it 5? Well, look, I'll count them out right here. There are a handful of different types of mock drafts you can look at. There's across the industry mock draft. There's individual site mock draft, which you can give that one 2 or 3 different points depending on you want to do a bunch of different sites. There's kind of the average Joe's mock draft, and then there's sort of a blend. So I guess that'd be 4. And then sometimes I count the individual site mock draft as 2 points because usually you like to look at what like Roto World experts are doing, Basketball Monster experts are doing, Hoopball experts. If you know what the people in your league follow, you can give a little bit more credence to those websites' expert mock drafts because then the people in your league are going to be going off that same information. Putting it all together, ADP movement, make that the 5th leg on this weird little thing I'm creating here. ADP movement is your last piece of the puzzle because you see where these guys get drafted right out of the chute, and then you see where their movement is headed late in the draft season, especially right before your own draft, and you make a pretty good call on where you actually need to take some of these guys. So we'll obviously pay really close attention to that. Neil, do you want to do one more to close us out?
Yeah, sure. I'm trying to decide between 2 guys. I will go with...
Do them both.
Yeah, okay. One overrated, Isaiah Thomas at 50.
Yeah, whoops.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to argue with that one. That's just nuts.
And then overrated, or I guess too high or too low. Klay Thompson at 63.
Oh, that's 63.
Yeah,
that's way low,
isn't it? I told you had a lot of these, Dan. I told you there were a lot that jumped out at me.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Isaiah Thomas, by the way, pre-ranked Yahoo. His projection, I should say, is 219. So there's not much of an expectation of big-time numbers from him there. I mean, if you can get him in your last round of the draft, I think that's a pretty reasonable one. Klay Thompson, I mean, I didn't even think he would ever come up in any draft day discussions because he's done literally the same thing for 4 consecutive seasons. There's almost no one in the NBA who you can just like put a pin in and say, okay, well, this is what we're going to get out of Klay. Last 4 years for Klay Thompson, 21.5, 22, 22, 20 points. Steals 1.1, that was the big year for him, and then 0.8, 0.8, 0.8 each of the last 3 years. Blocks, 0.6, 0.5, 0.5 each of the last 3 seasons. Assists, 2.9, 2.1, 2.1, 2.5. Rebounds, 3.2, 3.8, 3.7, 3.8. I mean, are we getting the picture here yet? Shooting, 46.5, 47, 47, 49, actually, last year. His field goal percent went up. His three-point attempts went down a little bit. His free throw numbers went down last year for whatever reason. But either way, I mean, you're talking about a guy that's basically between 22 and 28 every year for a half decade now. How could he get bumped down 4 rounds?
I don't understand it either. He's so consistent. And like you said, ADP will not be 63 on him. So We'll see what he is when you start doing the mock drafts. Or we have some data on that. Yeah,
that's actually pretty amazing, Neil, in talking to you in the ESPN auto drafts versus Adrian on sort of the Yahoo. Somehow he keeps getting himself into like ultra diehard drafts. How different the placement is on where all of these guys are going. We'll put a pin in it for now. We got a lot of this type of stuff we're going to be doing over the next few weeks. It's, what is it? It's August 23rd. It's Thursday, August 23rd. We're under 2 months from the start of the NBA season, but that still means that we have almost 2 months until the start of the NBA season. So a lot of things are going to change between now and when most of you have your fantasy drafts, which I would venture to say is probably about 6 weeks from now. And we'll just make sure to keep an eye on this stuff every week between now and then. Neil, any final thoughts? I don't mean to cut you off here.
Oh, not at all. Yeah, I just think these rankings are so out of whack right now. I'm not really learning much from the mock draft. So as much fun as I have with Adrian and hearing him do the mock drafts, and I don't want to get in more with him. I think we're gonna have to wait a while to see what's really going on.
I mostly just assume, Neil, that if I join a random Yahoo mock draft, Adrian will be in it.
That's a safe assumption. Yeah,
that madman.
I would take that bet as well.
That madman's doing like 6 of these a day. He's out of his mind. Although his was interesting in that we're sort of learning what the diehards are planning early, right? Because he's looking at his mock drafts, and some of these dudes that we talked about are going super early, and I feel like. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of a good analogy here. It just feels like a bunch of people ravenously chasing a piece of meat where they're sort of climbing on top of each other to get that little piece, and at the end they realize they've gone too far. They've gone too far, and I wonder if it's all going to kind of pull back a little bit as more of the regular folk step in September. That's when you see, I think, a lot of non-diehards get back into the fantasy stuff, so we'll keep an eye on Adrian's mocks as well. He is Neil Rochlani. I'm Dan Besbris. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. At Ball with Neil. Tweet at him if you want to get into our Hoop Ball leagues. Stay tuned for the Hoop Ball Draft Guide 2018-2019 edition. It is coming soon. I am Dan Besbris. Have a wonderful Thursday. Neil, you and Adrian wrapping things up tomorrow, the Friday edition of Fantasy NBA Today, and then weekend time. Have a great Thursday, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.